Meeting for Thursday, August 23rd, 2018, to order. Um, Thank you all for coming. It's good to see some public out here. We don't necessarily recognize you, but we'll get to you at some point in time. We have questions and answers and whatnot. In the meantime, we have a little bit of work to do here, and hopefully you'll enjoy some of the, I won't say banter, but discussion back and forth, if you will. Okay? So the first topic we have is we've been working on what we call a step-by-step guide to hooking up. The intent of this document is to provide folks that need to get hooked up with information in a, we hope, readily understandable and relatively easy way to understand what you need to do and when you need to do it. We are information passers. We are not the decision makers, if you will, about whether you have to hook up or not or those types of things. But we are here to provide information. So first I want to, I want to thank Ann in particular, and then with Val's support, to getting us to where we are at this point in time with the document that is now called Phase 2 Homeowners Sewer Hookup Handbook, what I need to do and when. And so we have that. I distributed a copy of that, the latest one, to everyone in the group here. So we have that as a document. I also want to recognize the fact that Noreen put together, which I think now has been given to everyone. You've probably just seen it for the first time. I did today as well. A simple summary, which is basically 2 or 3 pages, which has 5 steps in it, that she would propose as going in the front end of this as an introduction. The other document you have is a document from the Board of Health website that the Board of Health in the interim, mainly Megan Eldridge, has put together because of questions she's been getting, or inquiries she's been getting from the public. Some documentation that they now have on their website that is available to folks.
Point of information?
What's that?
Could I, just a point of information?
Sure.
I'm sorry. Just for the audience, I feel badly. Normally, everything we would give you copies and share with you, but these documents are really in the draft stage, and if we were to give something out that hadn't been vetted or had an incorrect piece of information, so that's the only reason. Otherwise, you'd be sitting with copies right now. Sorry, Peter.
And I need to add
Go ahead.
one thing. This draft is dated August 21st, which was correct when I sent it to you. I've actually made some changes in the document.
Okay.
And so when I get it to you for the next round, it will have a different date. So when you download it, make sure you notice the date and download the correct version.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to make a couple observations. The first observation is that in the document we have, I'll just say the "and" document. It's all text. There's intentionally no figures at this point in time. Any figures or appendices would be added once we figure out what the words are. Okay? Just want to point out, and this is actually there are 2 figures in here, but anyhow, this is about a 20-page document, if I can say that. The step-by-step 5-step document that Noreen put together, just for my own benefit, I played around a little bit today, and without any graphics in it, because there are no graphics in this either, but I reduced the size a little bit, and guess what? It fits on a double-sided printout. So I said to myself, this could be a great flyer to pass out to people, if you can do it this concisely, as well as potentially an introduction. Okay, it's just an observation from me at the moment. And then the Board of Health, I think, has some of the same questions that are answered in here, we answer in here, probably not in as much detail. Some of the graphics certainly apply. As a matter of fact, this one is in the document that you have, along with some others. But she has the sewer map and the listing of the streets and that type of thing in here. So at this point, go ahead.
The images were downloaded from Megan's site, and I double-checked. Those are actually owned by the town of, they're public domain.
Okay.
But they were done on our behalf, so they're technically legal to include.
Okay, good. So what I want to point out is that we had set aside a special meeting, we're calling a workshop, on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday at 8:30. with the intent of thrashing through this and getting through a document. For tonight, what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about what the shape and format of this might be. And my suggestion is, because Noreen has offered, she says she hasn't time to work on this. I know you're very busy. My suggestion to the committee would be that after we get a little bit of direction here, that Noreen and I then take all this and come back in preparation for the Tuesday meeting with at least a recommendation on what it looks like and how it fits together, if that makes sense to everybody. Otherwise, I think on Tuesday, we're gonna spend a lot of time, until we get there. So at this point, I just ask for some comments or direction or, you know.
Go ahead.
Well, Noreen, did you?
I'll defer, go ahead.
Okay, Ann.
When you work on this over the weekend, I assume some of it will be moving portions of the document?
Well, that's what we discuss.
Is that,
Well, yeah, that would be what we're discussing now, yeah.
yeah, rather than changes in the actual text?
Well, let me just say this. The document that I sent to you, which is the one you sent to me, in the format that I get rid of all the editing, I just call it editing
Yeah.
comments, I actually have, you know, some cleanups to it, let's just put it that way. So we would be changing the text. There are a couple things in here that occur to me that should get moved. For instance, one in particular is the one that says, what's phase two? What is it? What's it mean? I would put that pretty much up front so that people know what it is. But there will be
I'd like
some
to
rearrangement.
just put out that you're actually making work for me by doing it that way. And so if you could get me in a document the changes you've made, I can then have the document that we'll be talking about on Tuesday with everything incorporated.
Okay, so your preference is we give you a pile of paper that's a draft and then you put it into the system, is that what you're
My
saying?
preference would be that you'd actually work in a document, but if that's not possible, it takes me a huge amount of time to put paper in and move things when I'm not sitting there doing it.
Understand.
I had assumed we were going to do what you're describing over the weekend on Tuesday, because I can do it as we go.
I think we have to get, my opinion, there's some work that needs to be done up front to get it into an arrangement that we're all comfortable with. So let's just see where it takes us, and
All right.
we'll go from there.
Because realistically, I could quickly do the changes, but I can't do the changes at all if you're going to take that
I understand,
approach.
I understand. Noreen?
Okay, I'm gonna step back
And
for
I
a
won't
sec.
be able to do it on Tuesday either, when we're doing it live.
Understand.
I just can't.
I understand.
So, I'm a lay person, I have a different viewpoint. You know, I really feel that our audience are, you know, for the most part, 650 homeowner lay people. And I'm gonna push, I will push to keep it as simple and direct and no frills as possible. I mean, that's my feeling. I'm only one voice, and I'm not in the majority, but I'll keep trying to put that slant on it. That's the reason I wrote the introduction. With that said, however we go on, because my problem with the Ann document, as we call it right now, still comes down to a connection. And unfortunately, you know, months ago, we weren't able, we were doing other things, to take time to talk about who is our audience, you know, what are we trying to accomplish and things like that. But still, my basic question is, my septic system is in my backyard, what do I do? That's my basic question. It's been my basic question all along. And so when I get this document, although it's full of wonderful information, you know, then I have to sort through to figure out what are my options, because my septic system is in my backyard. And for me personally, just my take, I don't want to know a lot of the engineering, because I'm going to hire a professional engineer who's going to take care of that business for me. So I just want to know things about my decisions about my septic line, getting around my rose bushes, my driveway, my deck, or going through the cellar and getting around my air conditioning ductwork, or things like that. And I want to know how much it's going to cost. I mean, that's what I want to know. The rest of the stuff, I mean, there'll be a portion of the audience that might like to know that. That's not me. I mean, that's just my take on it. So with that said, but of course, it depends on which way the group wants to go. But with that said, I don't see how we could possibly, you know, turn this around in this format and do that by Tuesday, but that's like a separate conversation, so.
I'm more optimistic than you are, but go ahead, Ann.
I started out, if you recall, wanting this to be a two-page Q&A. And there's a portion of this document that is just that. As more people became interested and involved, the problem is everybody has different questions that influence them. Some of the core questions are the same. But also, what I had in mind is, if I'm in Florida in January, and I have to do this remotely, and so I crafted this to some degree so that people had a set of things that they could read up on before they got on the phone, before they called a relative who's local. So Megan's on the Board of Health is very to the point. It has all the basics, and she is beginning to put in sections where you can click through if you have additional, deeper pieces of information that are required. And this was not my initial approach, but as time went on, it appeared that it might be useful to have something that covered a great deal. This document doesn't have a table of contents yet, and one of the things that can be done, as they did in Eastham, where you have the questions, is I don't know if it can be set up so that the table of contents can take you directly to only one section of the document. And I have an appointment with the IT department on Monday to at least explore some of that as well. So I'll lay that out. There's more than one audience is the big challenge, and I've come to believe that both and might be the approach, that having Megan's Board of Health, and she's ultimately the source of information in one area, and having a quick step-by-step, but also having a section so that I'm sitting in Florida, or even worse, I'm really need to answer something and I'm in, oh, I don't know, let's be optimistic, I'm in Italy for 2 months having a wonderful time, that if I needed to find out some of this, that there'd be something that meant that I could at least read up on it. I think we have a very, very diverse group of people's backgrounds in that 650 homeowners. We have people who still, we had one person at the meeting who didn't realize they weren't part of the 650 because they didn't look at the map yet. We have people who don't read maps well. We have people who've been through this before in other towns and other lives. And so they want something that, in essence, is the Harwich version of it because they're looking to where they used to live and thinking it's that way. So that's just my context on this.
Okay, Val, do you have any input there?
I just envisioned something simple, but you'd be able to drill down into if you really wanted to get more information. That's what I kind of envisioned.
See, I'm coming at this, and I now think it's a hybrid document. So if I take this in whatever form it is, the AND document, I take this summary and I put it on front, and I put some information from the Board of Health in here as well where it's needed in the graphics. And I think we have a document that you can read the first 2 pages and get most of your stuff answered, and then if you want to go further, you can. I also think that we should think about this as being a single handout in addition. So I think a separate document that everybody and their brother can get one of these mailed to. If you want the full version of it, you can either go online or we can print it out, whatever, that kind of thing. So
My only problem with it being a single handout, whether inserted in this or separate, is that you wouldn't be able to put the list of professional engineers, or maybe you could squish it to
in
fit.
my opinion,
Yeah.
and I put that on there already, that doesn't belong there.
Oh, I
It's
haven't
not our
seen that
job to
yet. Yeah.
identify who provides services.
Well, we could
Okay.
just put contact the health department,
That's right.
yeah.
And
that's
by the way,
fine.
the health department won't have it either. They're basically gonna have the installers, because those are the people that
Yeah.
have to be licensed by the town. The registered professional engineers are licensed by the
All right.
state.
Okay,
And so anybody who's got a license in the disciplines that are necessary for this, I have a license in electrical. Obviously, I'm not gonna design
Right.
sewer systems.
Oh,
So-
come on.
You-
okay.
It
So,
would be a bad sewer system.
so actually, with that said, if this was reconfigured, you know, as I say, I did this just this
Yep,
morning.
yep, no, I
If
understand.
this was shortened, we could still
Put
put
those
in
figures.
the
Yep,
two
yep, yep,
pictures
yep.
and have it be a two-page.
Absolutely,
And it could be the first 2 pages of a hybrid document, but also be
A
available
standalone.
to be a standalone.
Yeah,
Right.
I could live with that.
you guys okay with that philosophy?
Very, yeah.
And, okay, so now are you okay with, you send us whatever version of this you have now. We'll take it for the weekend and see what we can do with it.
And
Okay.
can I grab one of you with my computer and make the changes before Tuesday? Does anybody
Okay,
have?
so I have a
In the
question.
changes we come up with?
Yeah,
Let's see what we come up with, I guess, is the,
because my week is the more compressed area, whereas on the weekend, I can't do some of
Okay.
my scheduled work, so.
okay, so if we come up with something and we can get it to you on Monday or something, then maybe you can.
No, no. I'm
You're saying it
looking-
the other way around.
I'm saying if I get it on the weekend, I can deal with it. By Monday, I'm,
Okay, let's see how we work it out.
Right, but I'm just trying to understand where we're going before we go. So you want to put this inside your document?
Here's what I think I hear. We're gonna take all of these.
Right,
You're gonna massage, I'll just say massage it,
that's right.
and I mean that in the sense that we're gonna blend it all
Yes.
together.
Collate it, yes.
Whatever we end up with,
Yeah,
if we can get it back to Ann, let's say Sunday sometime, then she has an opportunity to put it back into her document and make all the changes there. We need to see how extensive it looks, that's all. Let's see what we get to. We don't know yet,
I'm just not finished.
we don't know
sorry.
yet where we're gonna get to, so.
All right, fine. But, you know, I was hoping we would also, we could insert some pictures and.
I can do that with a single click.
But you gotta have the pictures.
I've got to have the computer with me.
So, just so I understand, what we're talking about doing is simply, you're saying, I might say, well, number 5 is more important than number 1, so let's put number 1 first, is that what we're doing?
Could, it could. Well, there may be things that come out of here.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
it would,
There are some things that are duplicated in here.
right, and I,
Okay, so that's-
and I
that's
think
our
some
job.
things might be better in a glossary,
Yep,
that's my
well,
opinion,
That's what we're gonna
then-
thrash out.
then, I guess I'm just not understanding why it has to go back into this format.
Unless you
Is
wanna
it for-
retype the whole document.
Is it for the display, just so I understand, is it for the presentation on Tuesday, or,
It won't be the same document that we're working on Tuesday if I can't get that information in. And it takes a long time to put it in if somebody doesn't edit as they go.
So it either goes back to her system, or we end up typing it originally, is the way I think I understand it here.
Well, actually, in all due respect, I have trouble reading your handwriting, so.
No, I understand that.
well, I don't know where the best way to go with this, so we would have to pretty much start working now and have it to Ann by Sunday? We
Well, if that's
can't
what-
do that.
Well, if that's where we're gonna go. We haven't even met yet, so let's see what we do.
See what happens.
The other thing I will say is we have Tuesday set aside to work on this. And if we
Right.
have to, we end up with just bringing our stuff here on Tuesday and saying, here's where we are, does everybody think that's the right thing?
Mm-hmm,
Could be a pile of paper, and then from there, we have to go and do something. You know, I think we have a little bit of time, you know, we've been talking about trying to get this out,
right,
you know, after Labor Day, but not
mhm,
waiting till November.
that's
you know,
fine.
that kind of- no, I know, but I mean, these people need the information, so that's what we're gonna do. But let's figure out the best look of the document first, and then we'll figure out how to work the mechanics. We know your limitations as far as time goes, we
Yeah.
understand
Okay.
and respect that, and you and I will, after this meeting, compare notes on when we can get together and what we can do.
I have plenty of time on the weekend, and the week is,
Okay, but you said you would need this before Monday.
that's because I have time.
I'm just trying to
on
get the
weekend.
timeline, all right? So before Monday to me means Sunday, and I just don't see how we can
Okay,
do
well,
this
let's have
by
our first
Sunday.
meeting and we'll get organized, okay?
Well, and if I get it Sunday night, I still don't have time to to put it in, because it's,
Right.
I can do it like literally on the screen as we go, if I'm sitting there with the two of you. But if I have to do it manually and see what changes you've made, it can take hours.
My best expectation, quite frankly, is that we're gonna get here Tuesday, we're gonna go through whatever the pile of paper in whatever order we have, whatever pictures inserted, and then we're gonna say, okay, even if you don't get to it till next weekend, get to it the next weekend. Even if we have to sit with you and do it. I think, that's what I think's gonna happen.
All right,
Okay? Let's see where it takes us.
Okay.
All right?
Oh,
You okay with that, Val?
Yep.
All right.
no, he's gonna do it, no.
He's gonna do it? Okay. We having fun yet out there? Okay, good, all right. Next topic
almost
is
to you.
Board of Selectmen monthly report topics, possibly the third Monday of each month. My expectation is that the first presentation we'll have, or update we'll have for the selectmen will be the third Monday of September. And my expectation is that we would provide this guidebook at that point in time. That's my expectation.
I thought about that, but I think you're setting a daunting, unmeetable goal.
I like that.
I know you would. I'm still trying to get over finishing this by Sunday, but at any rate, I would rather to have another topic planned for the 17th, because after this is, vetted, then it has to be proved, vetted, checked, it has to go to the Board of Selectmen, they'll have input. I just don't think that's a good idea. I think it would be better planned for the October.
So what's your proposed topic?
Okay, so I was thinking we'd go a little different direction than we have been lately. And one topic I might suggest would be, why are we only sewering 50% of the town? We always take it from the other point of the view, and I think there is maybe a part of the town that doesn't realize we're not sewering 100% of the town. That was just what I came up with.
Okay, I'll have to think about that. I mean, I'm not,
Yeah.
a lot of that has been discussed previously. I guess the question is, with the Board of Selectmen, whether they're looking for us to revisit the CWMP, Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. I don't mean to use acronyms, but we've all lived with that for 10 years now, so the question becomes, do they want to hear that again, or do they want to hear what this committee is doing? I don't know the answer to that.
Either do
I
I.
can find out.
Yeah.
So let's just put that on hold till our next meeting. If you guys have any topics, send them to me, and we can go from there, okay? Let's see how we do in this document. All right. Communication coordinator RFP status, anybody know? Anybody have any input? Just so the audience knows, the Board of Selectmen have decided, I think at our encouragement, to hire someone to be I'll call it the information coordinator with you folks, the end users, to be able to facilitate the flow of information from the questions you're asking or the concerns you have to the information that's available from the town, and get you connected with the right resources you need to get your work done. Okay, so that's a process where they'll issue a request for a proposal, and once that RFP goes out, they'll probably have a couple of weeks where they allow people to provide responses, and we're gonna be part of the interview process, as I understand it, so the candidates, somehow that'll get down selected. Let's say they get 10 proposals, probably get down selected maybe 4, and then we'll be part of that process to do that and interview the candidates and see where we go from there. So,
Who are you issuing an RFP to?
I'm sorry?
Who are
Would
you
you stand up at the mic,
issuing an RFP?
excuse me, stand up at the mic, we are on
Pardon
TV, just so you know, just stand up at the mic and identify yourself. Nobody from the tax assessor's office will be at your house tomorrow, trust me, we just,
How are you? Keith O'Donnell, 55 Sugar Hill Drive. I just had a question. So you're issuing an RFP is it to individuals or organizations, and what's it for?
anybody who would want to respond, okay? The idea is to be I'll just call it the information coordinator between the town and the end users or the customers, and that's you,
Okay, thank you.
okay? So that person might, in their plan, knock on doors and say, hey, I'm here to help you. They could be sending out a newsletter every month, to inform people as to what's going on. It could be a number of things that they do. And in their proposals, we're expecting they're gonna define how would they plan their time and effort to help you and help the town. So, Noreen?
And one of the key points of this position would be that then the homeowners would have one contact. I mean, that one person wouldn't be able to answer every single question, but they would know where to get the answer, who to direct you to, what the information would be, but rather than having the homeowners being sent to, you know, Board of Health, Water Department, this place, that place, so that's an important part of it.
And things like, you know, if you needed to find out where the water line is coming into your property, which is an indication of where the sewer can go or can't go in some cases, because there is a requirement for a 10-foot separation, that person could get you in touch with the water superintendent, for instance, and get that work done for you. Okay? I'm expecting that person might be in place in October. I mean, it depends on how the process goes, but, you know, hopefully before Thanksgiving.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question with regard to the water line. Is the department going to be charging for that service to identify
To
that?
identify, I do not believe so.
Okay.
I do not believe so. Okay, now the next topic before we get to your questions and whatnot is last Thursday and Friday, there was what was called the One Cape Conference, basically a county government conference for 2 days. The first day basically worked on wastewater issues, and the second day was a lot of different things like housing, that type of thing. So Ann, you were there, I was there both days, you were there the first day, so maybe give us your impressions of the first day.
The first day basically had 3 sections to it, if you will. One was Governor Baker and the Lieutenant Governor Polito were both there discussing the monies that are being allocated that the Cape has access to, which is very promising. Your taxes at work. And so that was a very positive. If we had heard the opposite, it would not have been good news. There were people there discussing climate change and the fact that it's real and has to be dealt with, and that will have an impact as well. I think there were also people from APCC, Association to Preserve Cape Cod, and one of the selectmen from Orleans, I believe, spoke briefly. And that was extraordinarily helpful because he was discussing partly the financial issues, but also the importance of the Cape as an ecology. And obviously it has an attraction to many, but it's also the basis, the financial basis of many incomes here. So that basically, is that accurate?
Yeah.
And it was a sold-out crowd. So there were multiple people there from multiple towns. And it was information sharing on the status. This is this the fifth one of these that they've had now, or the 4th?
5th, I believe.
5th. So it's an ongoing process of information sharing, and there's been considerable progress. They also presented a new set of maps that are coming forward. They aren't quite on their website yet. I would urge everyone to go to that website. Do you remember what the address is? It's very detailed maps that allow you to manipulate the maps so you can see where you are in floodplains and the influence of sea level rise. And they're very useful tools, and those will be posted. They had, the University of Rhode Island had some students and faculty put those together. They're about to go up. So they're a tremendous resource for everyone on the Cape.
We also had a workshop the first day, and I don't know if you went to that one or not, but it was on like passive stormwater systems. Think of it as being, you know, a grassy field or whatever, with some drainage in it and whatnot. And they've had some projects ongoing trying to characterize the benefit of doing that. I will say the sample size is very small, like 2 small systems. And I would say the results to date are inconclusive at best, but they're going to keep trying. The mapping you referred to, I think it's called the county flood zone mapping effort. And it is for insurance purposes. And it is very helpful as far as looking at how the Cape could look as the ocean rises, basically, is the way I would state that. The second day, the director, I guess it is, for the state of Massachusetts of Housing and Economic Development was I'll call it the keynote speaker. His name is Jay Shea. He used to be the town manager of Everett, I believe. And he had some good stories on in housing and economic development. I think particularly on affordable housing, the 10% number is always out there, and everybody seems to be at 5%. And a lot of it they attributed to lack of zoning or zoning modifications and whatnot. There were two great presentations on private development. One reconstituting up in Chelsea and Everett the old racetrack, the work that's going on there. And if anybody remembers, and I do as a kid, the South Weymouth Naval Air Station is being fully developed as a private development, if you will, and how housing density versus open space and that type of thing play into it were presented. So there are a lot of good things. There are a lot of good networking opportunities. There's no magic bullet. Was confirmed the state revolving fund was always talked about as 0% money during the conference, but as I understand it, there are certain things that qualify for 0% and others that don't, that might be 2% or something like that. But that money certainly is available. Leo Kakunis on the second day gave an update on the county, and he did reiterate about the county loan program. For those of you sitting out there, that Barnstable County has a septic loan program. Originally started out when people had to replace Title V systems, that they could get a loan, very low interest loan from the county, and get their system replaced. And it has been confirmed for those of you that need to hook up to the sewer when it comes, that you can apply, and the funds from that loan program can be used to hook up your sewer. So if you need, I'm making up a number, if you need $7,000 to hook up to your sewer at some point in time, or the sewer, you can apply to the county, and they have, I'll say, a substantial pot of money. It's tens of millions of dollars that the state has set aside for them for this purpose. So don't be shy about that if you need it. In the application, if I remember seeing it right, it's just a two-page thing. It's not, there might be a couple of attachments you have to provide, but it's pretty simple and straightforward. So, and we will, in our documentation that we talked about before, we'll have a link to that site and application. So if you need it, don't be bashful about it, because the money is there.
And they're very friendly. I mean,
Yeah, we've had them in here.
come in and talk to us. They
Yeah.
were very encouraging.
We had the director sit right here and spend some time with us, and, yeah,
He really wants people to come in.
yeah, they have money. And by the way, as the loans are paid back from people, then the funds gets regenerated. Obviously, the money goes back into the fund in addition to any other funds that the state decides to contribute to it. Okay, anything else on that?
That's it.
That's all good. Okay, now our questions and answers. So you guys must be here for a good reason. I know what the reason is. Maybe you want to learn about wastewater.
Dana Foster, 5 Hardin Lane.
Okay.
So I have a number of concerns, questions, of course. One of the main ones, we're in Phase 2, of course. That's one of the reasons we're here. I sit with a few neighbors. We're one of the only force main sewer systems. I'm not sure if this is even the correct forum to get these questions answered, but they illustrated 400 feet of force main on this Phase 2 implementation,
Okay,
and we're the 400 feet.
okay.
So my question is, we're all required to have grinder pumps on that road based on elevation? Is that someone can answer that question tonight? That would be,
Val, you up on that one?
You're going to be on low-pressure sewers, what it's called, and grinder pumps are going to pump into the low pressure, and eventually that'll go into
right,
a
so
gravity.
the concern that we have, obviously, is multi-question, multi-issues with the grinder pump. Obviously, it's the expense, it doubles our expense. The road next to us, Sugar Hill, actually has a pumping station at the base of the hill. You know, the neighbors would really be interested in exploring a different option in engineering that road. again, it doubles our expenses. The pumping the sewage uphill is basically our expense and our responsibility forever at this point, right?
Right.
Go ahead, Bill.
In Chatham, they specify we use E1s for low-pressure sewers. The basin is a pump, it probably costs you $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000, I believe. It is a ongoing maintenance. You would be required, at least in Chatham, I assume it's gonna be the same here in Harwich, to have a receptacle for an emergency generator. You don't require the emergency generator, but the capability if your power goes out.
Right.
So that's some of the.
This is my understanding of the situation.
There's some definite drawbacks to it.
Well, yeah.
Okay, but I think the gentleman's question, if I could paraphrase a little bit, because an adjacent street has a different configuration, I'll just say that.
It is
Is there a possibility of tying into that somehow?
Well, that's an option I'd be happy to explore with everyone. If we
Yeah, no,
can-
I understand. I think what we can do for you is get you in touch with, or at least pass your name and contact information on to the folks that are designing the system,
Sure.
so that they can get to you and you can address your concerns with them and see if there's a, some kind of I'll call it substitute or alternative.
It's gotta be an option, sure.
Okay.
And I wouldn't expect you to answer those questions tonight.
No, I understand.
Um,
Yeah, we don't
but-
have the design, for instance.
Yeah, I
in
understand
front
that.
of
But if we can get get some information, get the ball rolling in the right
Yep.
direction, that's
So
important.
can you just write down, would you please just write down your name, address, phone number, whatever, and we'll pass it on.
Absolutely.
David Young is our principal contact, or the town's contact at the design or construction, or design engineers, consulting engineers,
Right.
CDM Smith.
Now,
They're
my
the
understanding, there
ones
was a meeting last Wednesday. I had to register for it. I was unable to attend it. I believe he was there.
I think the meeting you may be referring to is the one that Coastal Engineering held.
All right. And they are,
Well, let me just back up. Coastal Engineering is one of these registered professional engineering firms
oh, all right.
who would design your pipe coming from your house
Okay, so they
to the in-the-street sewer,
were fishing.
okay? Well, what they're trying to do is they're doing some marketing,
I get it, all right.
and
No, I
so,
understand.
they're inviting, contacting folks, and that, anybody can do that who's licensed to do it,
Sure.
to try and provide information and whatnot. And we have heard, we've had professional engineers in here, we've also had utility contractors, the folks that would do the installation work.
Right.
Have been before us. And I think, there's no guarantee, but they've all said, hey, if a community or a street gets together, and face it, if you've got 15 houses on your street, if one engineering firm is doing the entire street, I think there's some economy of scale there. I don't know, you have to judge that, that's not
Yeah,
our
yeah, I mean,
job.
they can understand the whole scope of the project. and
Just
all that.
like, yeah, just like with the construction part of it, if you get one firm to do all the digging, I'm just guessing it's gotta be less expensive per unit than it would be for 15 different contractors going in and doing it.
Sure.
It's not our job to determine the market forces, that's up to them. And if a firm or two are out there that wanna be, progressive as far as, attracting, or providing information, good for them and good for you, I think,
Sure, I think everyone, we have 5 of the 6 homeowners here tonight.
Yep.
And I think everyone's interested in
Yep.
cutting their costs.
Sure, absolutely.
That's a good option.
Absolutely.
Another
The other
question.
thing, excuse me, the other thing about a grinder pump, that I have learned over time is if you're just a summer resident and you're not here in the winter, that system has to be drained, and you gotta be a little bit careful with it, when it sits idle over the winter, I guess is.
That was one of my next questions.
And let me just point out, Val Peter, who has recently joined our board, also works, he's a resident of Harwich, but works on the Chatham system. I just would say that. So when he references Chatham and what their experience is, they've got a sewer system
Sure.
that's been working for some time, not throughout the town. Eventually they will, but right now it's part of the town. And they run the treatment plant, that we're gonna be pumping this stuff too.
Understood.
So he's got an experience base there that, he can share. He's, happy to share it with you, so.
Sure, yeah. So
Keep going.
seasonally,
Pardon me?
seasonally, what's the issues with grinder pumps?
Just if you're, winterization, like you had talked about, there's times when you're gonna have, if you're gonna be gone for any extended period of time, it's a good idea to have it winterized.
Yeah, I'm seasonal, but I'm here all year, but not, there's blocks of time, 10, 3, 15 days, and I'm not here.
I don't think that would be an issue.
Well, I don't know that for a fact, so
Right.
that's certainly a concern.
All right, down in Falmouth, they had an issue with the candy cane portion freezing at one point, but they've resolved that issue.
And another concern is the final job, once this is done, paving. Paving on our road was a stone seal at best, and it was in terrible shape. They did a discount chip seal job on that road. What's the end result? Are they gonna
Is it a
patch it?
town-owned road or is it a private road?
Town-owned road. Are
Yeah,
they gonna
okay.
patch it, or are they gonna fix the road properly when they're done?
My understanding, and that gets in a Howie department, typically when the road's torn up, the idea is that you will end up repaving the road. So it will, it's not gonna be, for instance, you drive down Depot Road right now where they're putting the gas line in. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's obviously unsatisfactory. For the gas contractor, National Grid, they require, once they're done, to bring the road back up to where, where it should be.
Well, there was a gas main put down our road even before I was there, and they did just a terrible job of, whoever pulled the bond on it, let it go, and it never got corrected. I mean, the end of my driveway's a mess, and if they did this job and made it even worse, I'd be less happy. I can
Yeah.
say that.
You're talking about an individual gas line to your house, or?
I do, but from Church Street, and they ran a
Okay.
main down Hardin Lane.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, and
Okay.
they ran it on the edge of the road and the driveways, and they just
Yeah,
patched it
I
in.
think,
Caused a tremendous amount of problems.
yeah, I'm not making excuses for the
No, no,
gas
thanks.
company, but I think just, because I live near Depot Road, off of Depot Road, and I pay a lot of attention to it, and the equipment they have today, I mean, they've got a little machine that they actually lower down into the trench, that compacts everything. It's unbelievable. It's only this wide, and it goes in there and does all that.
Sure.
And so when they come up and they actually do a patch of it, it doesn't look to me like it's one of these things, 10 years ago, they used to do a patch, and guess what? The next spring, it would sink
Yeah.
by
Well,
2 inches, and it might stay that way, or they had to come back and fix it, whatever. These look like they're doing a good job at it. And I don't know, Val, in Chatham, you probably got experience with it.
We do, but what I would recommend is to reach out to Dave Young and ask him if they're going to be doing paving from curb to curb, or if it's just gonna be trench
Yeah, because
restoration.
that road was in poor condition before, and that wouldn't be their responsibility, but more the town or highway department's responsibility.
So
Yep.
Yeah, all right. So, yeah, before I leave, we'll exchange some information.
Oh, please do, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yes, sir. Just come up to the mic and identify yourself.
Yeah, hi. Peter Lapointe, 7 Hardin Lane. I think it would be really beneficial, you talked about not putting in names of engineers in your handbook, et cetera. If we're gonna try to work together and pool together our resources as a neighborhood, having information like that would be helpful, because we could reach out to multiple sources to try and get RFPs of our own. And the same with installers. I mean, if we're gonna try to pool our resources and do the street at one time and work with the same contractor, having that would be helpful for us to try to solicit that information as well. So I think that giving that information, even if it, as an information source, not making a recommendation or saying that, or whatever, would be useful information to the end users in terms of doing that.
Okay, let me just point out, I'll take the question in reverse.
All right.
The utility installer, the one that actually comes out and digs the trench and whatnot, those folks have to meet requirements of the Board of Health. So they will actually be licensed or approved by the town of Harwich to do that work. That information, those folks that are licensed to do that work, will be published by the Board of Health. So there'll be no issue with getting that information.
Okay.
The problem at the moment is, the Board of Health hasn't put together yet what the requirements are for those companies. And so it's too early to apply to be a licensed installer. Registered professional engineers, on the other hand, are registered by the state of Massachusetts, okay? And quite frankly, you can go online and find 20 of them on the Cape. It's not an issue. But those folks are already doing design work for Title V septic systems, which is the existing, system. Those are the existing systems you have to use. So quite frankly, you can go in the phone book and you can find 20, I don't mean phone book, I mean online, and find 20 of them very easily, quite frankly.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying that if 650 people do that, that's 600, if you provide that information as part of your handbook, it's just being more helpful to the end user. is
I
all I'm
understand.
saying.
We're just trying to stay out of promoting one versus another, because we don't license those folks,
I
we being
understand.
the town.
So that, will the Board of Health list who the licensed installers are at some point?
Yep.
And will that be in the handbook, or will that be a separate piece of information?
It'll be a while before they have that information, but I would assume it will get updated in the handbook as it's available. One thing I would encourage all of you to go on the Town of Harwich website. There's a wastewater tab on the first page. You click on that, it's a blue guy over here, and there's a lot of information there that we're now trying to mold and put into this handbook that's already available there. It's just not in the concise form. There's a lot of it takes time to go through. If you go to the Board of Health website, likewise, you'll find things like, septic system regulations and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of information there. In some cases, you've got to know your way around to get there, and that's what we're trying to help here.
Understood.
Kind of get that
And all I'm
consolidated.
saying is that as a committee, to help better serve your users, the more information you can give us,
Understand.
the more we'll appreciate it. And as far as the forced main issue on Hardin Lane goes, it seems to me that there should be some opportunity for input by the end users, and I don't know if that has happened in town, if there's been a designer-user interface meeting at some point.
To my knowledge, because the design is not to the point where it's finalized, I'm expecting that once the design is, the town owns the design, so once the design is finalized, the design will be put out there. And I would think any individual or neighborhood or whatever that's got issues, certainly with a force main or something, or grinder pumps, would want to get in front of the engineers and understand it better. And we can facilitate that.
But I would say that that's better to happen before the design is finalized, as part of the design process, as opposed to having an end design where there's been a lot of engineering work done, and then trying to fight an uphill battle to get something changed.
I understand that part, particularly mentioned uphill, because that's what you're pumping, but has everybody here had an elevation survey done? The engineers went out and did an elevation survey.
Yes.
Did you get notified they were doing it, or notified about it?
They knocked on our door when they were coming by.
Okay,
But we haven't seen the design. We don't know the specifics, and I don't think it should be up to us as individuals to reach out to the designer, because the designer's working for the town.
no, I understand, I
So
understand.
it would be really great if the town would facilitate a meeting so that, with the designers, so that the users could meet with the designers, with the town representatives, so that we could provide input.
I understand. Can I just ask the question, are you all from the same street? You're all on the same street?
Same area.
Is there one person that could be the contact for that street, for instance? I know on my street, we have like a little neighborhood thing, and if you call Fred, he gets the word to everybody. Is that possible?
Yeah, any one of us, I can do it.
So when you give us your information, can we use you as the contact? Sure. That'd be great. And we'll do that. We'll facilitate that for
One
you.
of the issues even for us to determine the stub location might be easy on a straight, flat road, Gorham Road or any other road in town. But it's very difficult to determine where we want a stub based on the current design.
I understand.
It's almost impossible to figure
I
what's the
understand.
best approach.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
This gentleman behind you is raising his hand.
Well, I was gonna,
My name is Arthur Molly, and I live on Church Street, right adjacent to Hardin Lane. I have a question. On this map here, we're designated to have a pressure sewer. Pressure sewer?
The low-pressure sewer,
Yeah,
correct.
not a force main, pressure sewer. Is there anybody on the committee who could describe what a pressure sewer is and how it works?
Al, you're up.
So, low-pressure sewer is where the grinder pumps connect into, and then through depending on the size of the pipe and the number of people that are connected to it, could range from 1.5 inches to 2-inch diameter pipe. Eventually, that low-pressure sewer will discharge into a gravity portion of the sewer. And then from there, depending on the location, it'll go to a pump station that you're referring to. A force main is the pipe that's from the sewer pump station. That's when you refer to a force main, that is the pipes that are used to push sewage over to its next location, whether it be another pump station or down to Chatham.
Now, my question is, this means that on Hardin Lane, there would be a single pipe, maybe 1.5 or 2 inches in diameter.
Depending on the number of people,
And they
it's a
would be-
common line,
And they'd be
yes.
pumping it, what would the pressure be, the PSI on that?
It all depends at the time. The way, there's two different pumps that I'm familiar with. E1s are, deal with high pressure and low volume, where, bless you. Whereas the Myers is high volume, low pressure. So, I mean, the pipe, I don't have an answer as far as the PSI. It's not gonna be exorbitant.
Would each dwelling on Hardin have to overcome with their pump the pressure on a 2-inch pipe or 1.5-inch pipe?
Well, the pipe is, you're always competing with your neighbor in that sense, but you're not all gonna flush at the same time.
No, I mean, let's say only one person on the street flushes, but you'd have to compete with the pressure that's in the pipe already.
There will not be a constant pressure. It's not like a water main.
Is
There's
there a
constant
check valve
pressure.
in each service?
Well, there's a check valve on each
So
service,
you can't
but,
push back on your house.
yeah, but also that pipe is not under pressure at all times.
Right, and then my second question is, on such a system, obviously there's check valves, right?
Correct.
But we're dealing not with water, but sewage. And even if it's something that crumbles up or crushes the sewage, it's still gonna be sewage. Check valves can get stuck, right? And is there any backup on that?
So what'll happen is your waste will go into it's about a 70-gallon basin where there's a pump, a grinder pump to grind up all the waste. And it'll discharge out to the street, and at the street there'll be a check valve as well as a curb stop. And we have not experienced failure of the check valve so far in Chatham.
On these systems?
On these systems. Right now, I can tell you that we have not experienced those.
And how
You know,
long
it's not to
how-
say that it'll never happen.
How long has those systems you're talking about been in place?
Chatham expanded their sewer in about 2010, 2011.
Right, so they've lasted.
They have, yes.
Okay, and,
You know, I'm not gonna sit here and say that it will never happen.
no,
but
my final question or observation is that in Phase 2, right, the Phase 2 area, we are the only street or only section that has this pressure sewer. Are there other alternatives for our street?
That's something I'd have to ask CDM. They're the ones that are designing it. They're the ones that designed the low-pressure sewer. I'm in the first phase too. I'm gonna be gravity. That's a question as to why CDM felt that they had to design
You don't
low-pressure
know
sewer.
about any alternatives to that?
Well, I mean, apparently you were unable, you were gonna have to pump into something. Maybe the pipes, they couldn't get it that deep. I don't know what was behind the decision.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not an engineer at all, but what I see are two pipes going down that road. God forbid happen to dig another little wider ditch, but two pipes going down the road, one a collection pipe, from the different dwellings, and then at the bottom, a pump that pumps it out to the main line. Now that involves another pipe, all right? But that would save the people on that road the danger of backups, because they're dealing with pressurized sewage, right? Not like a regular sewage.
So,
And that also would be less maintenance, less chance of something failing and being flooded with sewage.
so if I understand you correctly, what you're,
Now, I'm not an engineer.
no,
so-
I understand that, but what I'm hearing, and maybe I'm mistaken, is basically adding an additional pump station. Having it, in order for you all to have gravity, it would
Yes.
gravity to
Well,
another
they're
pump
gonna have some
station.
kind of a pump station anyways to pump it up.
Yeah, I'd have to take a look at the plans.
Well, I mean, to get pressure into that one pipe, 1.5, 2-inch pipe going uphill, they're gonna have some kind of pump down there.
I have to take a look at the plans to see, but basically, the low-pressure sewer would eventually discharge into a gravity line,
Yeah,
and then it would gravity onto a
but
pump
they're
station.
gonna have to have some kind of a pump at the bottom of the hill.
Well, that's the pump station you were talking about, correct?
No, the pump station's at the base of Sugar Hill, adjacent neighborhood. Our neighborhood, for example, Bill is the lowest house, 50 feet in elevation below me. Is his grinder pump required to pump it up to 50 feet in elevation? That would seem like a pretty tall order for a small residential pump.
Yeah.
Well, the best thing is to get
CDM.
the designers of the system, yeah.
It's-
I mean, we're only gonna be speculating here amongst ourselves and, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, we'll have to sit down with him.
We're trying to just get some facts. to
Yeah,
know
yeah,
what
yeah.
we're-
No, we'll get them in
Got it.
touch,
Right.
we'll get them
And
in
you've
touch with
answered
you
that pretty
and,
well.
Well, hopefully, and hopefully I haven't
But-
confused.
And I'm not an engineer, but just two pipes. One, which would collect through gravity, really, from dwellings. And then a pump to pump up that 400 feet, which doesn't require a monster pump, into the sewage. So we were talking just an extra pipe, which would save so much, so many problems, you know? And I appreciate you mentioning that you're going to get us a contact with the engineers.
Well, here's what I'm thinking of, quite frankly. Is this a convenient day and time for you folks generally? I mean,
Sure.
It varies, but it could be.
I mean, so if we, you know, if we can arrange, I wouldn't mind having this as an agenda item for one of our meetings,
That would be terrific.
and then have CDM Smith be here. We can facilitate it and watch what goes on, but, you know, that interaction is important, and, you know, I think you all,
You invite one of the engineers on the design team?
well, that's what I'm saying. CDM Smith is the design contractor,
Oh, great.
and the gentleman who at least works with the town has for a number of years now at the town of Harwich. His name is David Young. And now there are some other folks that are doing some of the detailed design work, but I would expect at least David and maybe one of his associates, who are the guys that took all the elevation numbers that, you know, for the streets and whatnot, along with the survey data of the streets, and now is trying to lay out pipes based on gravity, you know, which can get fairly complicated. They'd be the ones to best address this issue and talk to you about it. So not that you're gonna get satisfaction, but at least we want to get that dialogue going so you better understand them and they better understand you, and maybe there is a compromise here.
Well, it has to be a compromise.
Well, it also seems unfair that 5 households would have a 5 or 6 time extra expense to hook up to the sewer against everybody else, because we're the only ones that happen to fall outside the design parameters for a gravity-fed system. It just, and, you know, it puts the burden on us unfairly, I believe, to be mandated to hook up when you have extra expense.
I'm sorry, if you could step to the microphone next time, I'm getting yelled at by.
So now I would say in that regard, and the Board of Selectmen would be the ones to make a decision on this. There are systems where when gravity pumps are needed, that the town or city would do a mass purchase, I just call it that. And let's just pretend that in your area we needed 15 grinder pumps. You know, there are some towns that would go out and say, okay, we want them all to be the same, number one. So if they have an emergency situation, they can get serviced and, you know, that kind of thing. And maybe the town in those cases provides those pumps, for instance. So, you know, that potentially saves you the cost, at least of initially buying the pump. There are towns that have done that. You may want to, once you hear back from CDM Smith and we have the dialogue, et cetera, you may want to approach the Board of Selectmen and say, hey, in our neighborhood, X of us need to go get pumps. You know, we think the town, as part of our burden, should be providing them. They have not taken that up. I don't think, you know, I know it's been floated by them once or twice, but, you know, they've been too bogged down to think about those details at this point in time. But it is something that other towns or other systems have done, so.
All right, well, sorry, Peter LaPointe again. Just to that end, I would really appreciate it if you would be the advocates for there to be an egalitarian approach to this, where all the people that are hooking up are sort of facing the same kind of incremental expense to do so. That would be a really terrific position for your committee to take to the select board, and maybe that's your topic for the next meeting.
I was just gonna say, that sounds like that's our topic for September.
Peter?
Point well taken. Go ahead.
I
Go ahead, one second. Noreen, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to a couple of things that Mr. Lapointe said. One is, some of these ideas, as Peter says, have been floated, but final decisions haven't been made. So any advocacy by us or any parties is, a good thing to move things in that direction. In terms of the grinder pumps, I know one of the issues was, well, even if the town supplied them, then who would do the maintenance 5 years later? So, there are some things, and who would insure it, and, so some legalese and some technicalities that would have to be worked out, even if the intent was there. But the first move, of course, would be to get the intent there. And that's the first thing. The other thing I wanted to say to you, when you asked about providing lists of professional engineers, I believe right now, I've been told by the town administrator that the health department is giving one out. And it was people that the town may have done business with, not that they are supporting them or not. But that was why our document, nobody's figured out the disclaimers yet, if something's gonna be given out, like that we are not advertising these people. So we will be seeing the health department people next week. That'll be one of the things we'll be discussing. But in the meantime, it doesn't stop anybody from calling the health department and saying, do you have any information on this?
Okay, wait, this gentleman has his hand up.
The impression, I don't want to have made the wrong impression. In phase 2, there is one street, that's our street, with the pressure sewer. However, in phase 3, I think they've got 3 little sections.
Yep, as they get further out.
Yeah, so you can't say that no one else in the whole project,
Understand.
right? But in the largest phase, on this map here, of the phase 2, 3, and 8, we're the only one. But that's just a side thing. I'm very happy that you're going to try to get a meeting with one of the engineers who are part of the design. That's very important. And the second thing is there's got to be an alternative to this that would not require such huge maintenance, maybe risk, expense, compared to what? Most of the other town residents. I mean, when you talk about a 2-inch diameter pipe, that's not a very big pipe. And you've got sewage going up there, all right? All kinds of problems. The town will be ripping that road up every 6 months or something. There's got to be another alternative that really isn't that much more expensive.
I would just say this, from my limited knowledge of it, the size of the pipe, when you get down to the 2-inch and you're pressurizing it after it's been ground,
Yeah.
assuming it's ground. I've heard stories way back when, with initial grinder systems, and one was done in Provincetown, I believe, that when they did it, they didn't do it properly, so they had some issues with pipes clogging up. But since then, the engineers have figured out how to do it, and it's not been an issue. But you can hear that from them when they're here.
Yeah,
So,
well, I'm not an engineer.
and we're not
It's
trying to
just my
design
mind,
a system,
yeah.
we're just trying to get
Yeah.
the right folks together in the room.
But
We
I
certainly have you in a
I
room.
want to thank you. I'm looking forward to.
Well, no, we want to get it done for you,
Yeah,
that's our
because,
job, so,
the attitude of your committee is good,
good.
and we're happy with that. But we would like as much information and also some alternatives if possible, because I just feel it's a burden on these people on this one street compared to people who can hook up to regular sewer lines, And I'm not an engineer, so I don't have answers,
Understand.
but common sense.
But you're an end user, which is what we're focused
Yeah,
on, so,
right. Thank you.
thank you. And you had your hand up, sir, come on. Up. Hopefully you folks all knew each other before you came here. Maybe this is the way you get it together,
Now I'm
right?
meeting more of my neighbors here
Hi,
as we go.
hi, my name is Greg Monaghan, and I live at 57 Sugar Hill. And Keith and I are neighbors, and we basically have the same problem.
Okay,
Yeah, so my question, our question, and thank you guys for setting aside the time to give us this information and participate in the process here. Again, Keith O'Donnell, 55 Sugar Hill Drive. So I completed a new septic system in 2015, brought my property up to code in Title V, all that, the expense of over $20,000 with the engineering and the construction, all that's good stuff. I was given the impression that if I just paid, whatever the fee is for the T, and to be brought to the end of my street, and I choose not to hook into the system, as long as I don't sell my property, then I can't be mandated to do it. Can you comment on that?
My understanding is that the Board of Health sets those regulations, and just like they did in Chatham, they were set over there. And my understanding is when the line goes by, and when the sewer goes by your property, at the moment, within a year, you're required to hook up, no matter what. Now, the Board of Health, we've had them in here and had some discussions. They're aware of situations like yours, because obviously when the septic system went in, they inspected it, and, they had the records of it. And so they've talked about the possibility of applying for a variance. The only thing I would tell you is, and I'm not speaking for the Board of Health,
Sure, understand.
my impression is you may get a variance for 1 year, 2 years, but not forever. There will come a time where they'll make you hook up, just the way it is, so.
Okay, so where would the idea, because I've heard this from multiple sources, that unless the property is sold, that's really the only action that can, mandate you bringing it into compliance.
What happens today,
Yeah,
in today's environment, and recognizing there are no sewers in the town of Harwich, when you sell a property or go to sell a property in the town of Harwich or any other, town in the state of Massachusetts, you have to have your septic system inspected. If it passes inspection to be compliant with what's called Title V, the design and,
Understand.
the building of it, that certificate that it complies is generated by the Board of Health after the inspection. At the closing, for the transfer of the property, the lawyers require you to present that documentation to say, my system is Title V, therefore I can transfer the property. It's a requirement of transferring property, okay? Now, if the regulations say once the sewer goes by, you have to hook up, my interpretation of that is, if you go to sell your house at that point, the inspection will not be on your septic system, it will be on your connection to the sewer.
or lack of.
What's that?
Sorry, didn't,
Yeah, so it will, if you connect to the sewer, you're connected to the sewer.
yeah,
Okay, that's what it would be. Now, as part of that connection, for all of you, when you make that connection, along with the inspection of the pipe that's installed, there'll be an inspection that says you actually abandon your Title V septic system, either by filling it in your backyard or removing it or any combination of that. That's up to you and your contractor how you do it. But that would have to be inspected as well.
okay, and
So
how would
I think that information is not correct that you have, that you would only have to connect on the transfer of the property.
Okay. And what's the vehicle that you guys would use to enforce like a connection? I'm not saying I won't do it, I'm just like, how do you force
Well, the
people
Board
to
of
do
Health
it?
has responsible for everything associated with, just call it the health and well-being of septic, I guess, is the way to
Okay.
describe it, so.
Cool,
yeah.
thank you.
So they would do any inspections and, they would be it.
Hi, as I said, I'm Keith's neighbor, and I had a new septic system put in 3 years ago. And it was anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000.
Yep.
And it just seems to me, that if you have something put in and then the town turns around 3 years later, 4 years later, say, no, that's no good, you got to take it out. I hope there's a little leniency in that situation. I could see if I sold the property, as Keith said, I would have to, connect. We'll put the T in or whatever. But I think it's, it's kind of a tough thing to do, to tell someone to put this in, that you need this. The town was good enough. I put an addition on. They were great to us. I love it here, But it just seems so unfair, that they would force you, 3 years old. I mean,
Yeah, well, no,
Come
we've
on.
heard- we've heard that comment before.
Yeah,
Can
I mean,
just ask the question, You mentioned about adding on, is that why you had to upgrade your
Yes,
septic
yes,
system?
I did, and they were very good to us, I can't complain, you know, we had local people do it,
In your
whatever.
case, was it a sale of the house, or was it an
No,
upgrade?
no, no, we just,
how about
we
your
had
neighbor?
we have 5 grandchildren in
Okay.
the last 6 years, so.
Good for you, congratulations. In your
Thanks.
case, was it a sale, or was it an upgrade, or?
Yeah, it was a sale or a transfer. I bought out some other stakeholders.
Okay,
And I chose to upgrade the system at that time.
okay.
But then my other follow-up question, which I thought of earlier, you talked about money from the county of Barnstable. Will that be zero interest money?
You have to talk to the town of, county of Barnstable.
As a, taxpayer, I definitely, my opinion is that it should be provided at zero interest.
I can,
It's,
Add that input, that's for the
no, I
record.
understand that, there's another element to that. In some towns, when folks go to hook up to the sewer, and let's just say it's $7,000, I'm just throwing that
Mhm.
number out there. There are towns that offer that as what they call a betterment, which means that over time, just pick a time frame, 20 years, do you pay that number off by an increase in your taxes every year associated with that cost of doing it. The town hasn't figured out if it's gonna do that or how it's gonna do that at this point in time, but it's, we're hearing from folks like you, the cost is obviously an important consideration, so.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it.
And keep coming back, I mean,
I
it's,
will.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We're gonna keep informed. Yes,
can
ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, Noreen, did you have something?
I always do.
Can we just ask one follow-up, you gentlemen?
Gentlemen,
Guys, can we follow you up with one question?
all right.
Just,
no, I just wanted to add one thing. What I have heard the health director say many times, even though they may not have all the criteria published yet, but they will be taking all of those situations on a case-by-case basis. So I would absolutely advise you to contact them early and often, and, get in there so because they will be the deciders, will be the Board of Health.
Like I said, we've been here 30 years, we raised 2 boys that are lifeguards, we love it here. This is the first thing that ever came our way that
Yep.
it's kind of,
and by the way, just like this board,
yeah,
the Board of Health is made up of citizens of the town.
Right, that's
So,
great.
it's not like you're dealing with some bureaucracy. I mean,
Right, all right,
it's
that's
a small
good.
town, and we like to think we treat people that way, so.
all right, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Dorothy Bassett, and I'm from 10 Hardin Lane in Harwich. Thank you for setting up a meeting with CDM Smith. That'll be really great to work with them directly. As we've talked about a lot, I know that it's a financial burden to put in a system like this. It's a great environmental program. I think it's a worthwhile investment. Is there any incentive for us to work with this? Like, I know that in Chatham, the houses all were granted an extra bedroom for hooking up because there would no longer be the septic limitations. Would we be eligible for that benefit as well?
Here's the rule. And the zoning, by the way, in East Harwich does not change at all under the zoning. Bylaws do not change under the sewer. What does change potentially is, you may have built a house, I'm just making this up, a 2-bedroom house on a 1-acre lot. I'm just making that up. The zoning out there is such that for every 10,000 square feet of lot, you're allowed 1 bedroom. So if you have 40,000 square feet, and today you have a 2-bedroom house, you would be allowed to go to 4 bedrooms. That's my understanding of the zoning out there. The zoning is not changing one way or the other based on the sewer.
So no matter what the septic is, per 10,000 square feet of lot, you get 1 bedroom.
Yes.
Is there any wiggle room for that?
You'd have to go to what's called the Zoning Board of Appeals. Again, that's another board that hears, there is zoning bylaws in place, and if someone wants a waiver, like either on a setback or something like that for, a building, they go there and they plead their case and make their case, and sometimes they're granted, sometimes they're not. I mean, it just depends. And/or in this situation, you may have to go to the Board of Health and get a variance, so. But you can do that now, for instance. I mean, if you had a building issue today, you can seek relief from by appealing to a zoning authority, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
But zoning in East Harwich has not changed. For 15 years now, have been talking about what to do in East Harwich and, how to make things grow or not grow or do this or, whatever. And there's never been a consensus, so the zoning bylaws have not changed in a long time out there. So, okay, anything else? You've exhausted us. No, we really did. I have to say, this is the most interactive meeting we've had. Most time, no, seriously, I congratulate and I applaud you for that. In most cases, we might have one or two people out here taking notes or something, but we appreciate, see, we don't learn unless we learn from you. And for instance, tonight we talked about the guidebook, and I'm just going to say, one approach was just, sort of minimal information, and now we're deep diving into some things for which you're thirsting for knowledge and information. So I think there's a combination of those things, and I think it's a reason for getting
I
this
was
highway
unable to
done.
find any information on the pressure sewer at all. I had to research it myself. I had to research it privately to find any information on the pressure sewer. There was no information at all regarding that in any information that Harwich had put out.
Okay, I will say that, I can't remember the date, but last winter, there was an information session that was arranged by some folks in East Harwich, one of Larry's neighbors in Larry Valentine's neighborhood, that was held over in Brooks Library. And it was actually a gentleman who is in the grinder pump business. It was on a Saturday, might have been like 10 o'clock in the morning. And it was well attended. There were probably 60 people there. And at that point, if we can get that information or get it recovered, I'd be happy to pass that on to you.
No, I mean, I'm well versed in it now.
If I could add, though, and my iPad doesn't want to connect to the system, so that's that. But there was a document, Peter, that we put out last winter, but I think we titled it, we didn't title it, grinder pumps. We titled it something like "What We Have Learned So Far" or something. I believe that's on
Yep,
our
we did that,
website.
yep.
And
Thank
I
you.
think it's got like 20 pages of pictures of, far more pages than I ever wanted to see of grinder pumps, I'll tell you,
Yeah, I went through a lot of that, but
Okay,
I really want to entertain a different conversation.
yeah, okay,
You know,
that's just what,
although I appreciate the
Yeah.
information on grinder pumps,
right,
that's something I'd rather
Right.
have.
I
We
understand,
understand, we
Yeah.
understand.
So we want to move forward from
right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Okay, we want to make sure we get your contact. What's that?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Come anytime. But we,
Approach?
I want you to write this down. Give you the magic pen. You can do that.
Sure, thank you.
And with that, unless anybody else on the board have anything?
Yeah, one thing
thing.
I'll say, we do have a common email, so if you have questions in between our meetings, it's wastewater@townofharwich.us, am I
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
And Town of Harwich is one word. So if you send any question from any of you to that email, we have our chairperson monitors that, and she'll get it to all of us or to the right people. Might not have every answer you want, but at least it's a way to communicate in between time.
So they know.
Should I put my Harwich address on here?
Yeah. Oh, please do,
Everything.
yeah.
Give
Yeah.
us a-
I have one.
Go ahead.
too.
Yeah.
I'm also going to just ask a quick question. Have any of you in the Sugar Hill, you're all that neighborhood, I believe.
When
have
I
you talked?
contact the
Have you
engineers
talked to some of the other,
Excuse me, let me talk to you over here.
Have-
Excuse me.
have you talked to some of the other neighborhoods that are working through their issues? Because some of them have done considerable amount of research, and I'm just curious if you have talked to other neighborhoods.
So far, the folks on Hardin Lane have just been talking to each other because,
Yeah.
we just found out what's going on.
Okay,
I will say that we're less than 150 feet from the Sugar Hill subdivision. If the main could be a right-of-way to go 100 feet along somebody's boundary, we could be part of the gravity system, which would save a pump station, which would be another alternative. So we're thinking of other alternatives, and at this design meeting would be a great way for us to communicate that.
Thank you. Good.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose that we adjourn.
Second?
We're adjourned. Thank you.